So, this is a happy occasion for me to deliver a lecture for Ego program. I am happy to see my friends here, Professor Derol, who has been very kind enough to accommodate me in all these programs. He's a wonderful person, and I could see my good friend Tanebi also, and of course Kimiko has been very helpful in making this program. And I have one a student from India. So since I am going to talk on the culture, religion and bioethics of India, my job has become very simple, I would say, because my student is from India.
You have another many students from different countries on
Yeah, of course. So let me straight away go to the topic. Now, nature. Now let me first define what we mean by culture. Quite often it is said nature has no history, but culture as a value seeking is inherently historical. So what I am trying to say here is there is a distinction between nature on the one hand and culture on the other hand. Nature, which has no history, cannot represent particular aspect of life. But culture is that which represents the whole life of the human being. Why? Because culture is always a value-seeking one. Because human beings have the tendency to develop a value-seeking aspect in the life. In other words, human beings are inherently connected with the values. Normally we say that animals or birds do not have values. This may be an anthropocentric view, but normally it is said that human beings are value-seeking beings. Because human beings alone possess the capacity to make a distinction between what is value and what is disvalue. In other words, human beings have the capacity to make a distinction between what is merit and demerit. So what is the purpose of making this distinction? The purpose is to emphasize that merit is something which has to be practiced, or good is something which has to be practiced, and bad or demerit is something which has to be eliminated. So this is a basic point which I would like to make in the context of culture. And culture is always bound up with a social and symbolic tradition. In fact, it is said culture has a close link with the tradition. Because tradition is that which connects the past, present with the future. Without tradition, culture cannot survive. So there is an inherent relation between culture and tradition. And also, we have to keep that in mind, that in culture, the developmental process is operated. Now, since my lecture is limited to Indian context, I would like to see the problem or the issue from the Indian standpoint. So I would like to state that in India there is a synthesis between culture, religion and bioethics. I would say this is a triad of values. What are they? Culture, religion and bioethics. These are closely or intimately related in Indian context. Because if you look at our ancient philosophical or religious tradition in India, one can see how the individual's lives are connected with the nature. Quite often it is said it is a cosmocentric life. The cosmocentric life means the cosmos, that is the world as such, is connected to the life of the individual. In fact, philosopher Raimundo Panikkar has talked about what is known as Cosmo Theory, wherein it is said there is an interrelationship between God, human beings and the world. So, it cannot be reduced, that is, life cannot be reduced to mere anthropological understanding. In other words, though human beings quite often said it is a nucleus, it is not mere anthropological, it is a cosmocentric, which means it is a duty of the individual to consider the life which is prevalent in other living as well as non-living beings. This is a very important point which has been emphasized in Indian philosophical as well as religious tradition. So, it is not mere anthropocentric aspect which is celebrated in Indian tradition. Indian philosophers and religious thinkers have a concern for living and non-living also. So this is one of the salient features of Indian culture or Indian values. Now in India, all of us know, tradition plays a significant role. That is the reason why we say India has a very rich tradition, kinds of ethical values which has emerged at the cultural background. In fact, in India, one can see that the means and the end go together. What does this mean? This means, no doubt the end is important, the result is important, but the ways by which or the means by which you reach the end is also important. For example, if you take the freedom movement of India, Mahatma Gandhi often emphasized the interrelation that exists between the means and the ends. That's why we got our independence through Satyagraha, Ahimsa. These are the two principles which has been emphasized in the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi, which means it is necessary to attain freedom, that is the end, but in order to attain freedom, we cannot use means which are violent in nature. That's why we got our Indian independence through non-violent means. So the means as well as the end are important. This is very much emphasized in Indian culture. Here one can see the role of bioethics. Bioethics also considers that both means and ends are important. It is the duty of the human being to give respect for all living and non-living beings. If we look at the Vedic tradition and the Upanishad tradition, one can see that the Upanishadic sages or rishis gave importance to not only to human beings but also to non-human beings. So we have to keep in mind that in India there is a synthesis between culture, value and bioethics. India is a country where there is plurality of culture. This is something very much appreciated by many foreign scholars and thinkers, because here we do not have one culture, but it is a synthesis or what we call the plurality of cultures. Different cultures are playing a very important role in shaping the Indian culture. For example, a person coming from Tamil Nadu, he is having his own culture, and a person representing Kerala, for example, he or she has their own culture, and person coming from Bengal, he or she has his own culture, but all these cultures are clubbed together. This is what we call the plurality of culture. So Indian culture contains the plurality of culture which emerges from different parts of the country. And the uniqueness of Indian culture is it always appreciates each and every culture, whether it is small or big, and giving each culture its due respect. And culture is that which adapts itself to the situation. So it takes into account the changes that are taking place outside. It is slow but steady. What I am trying to say here is that there may be certain changes that are taking place in the tradition, but in spite of that we call it as a tradition. In fact, there is a distinction between the periphery and the core. So the core elements of cultural tradition cannot be changed. If there is some change in the core, then it no more exists as a tradition or culture. So there may be certain changes at the outside, at the periphery level. So the culture or tradition has these two important aspects. The center, which is otherwise known as the core aspects of culture, which cannot be changed or which can never be changed, whereas there are certain outside or some changes that will take place at the outside, which is at the periphery level. For example, the values which have been preserving from the ancient past up to the present is the core. But the way of dressing, for example, the way in which we take different varieties of fruit, these are all peripheral. So there is always a distinction between the core and the periphery element, which has been playing a very important role in shaping the cultural tradition of India. And also we must remember the fact that culture is that which unites men into one cultural group. So people, though are different, they are placed in one cultural group according to the culture which they are practicing. So the development of many culture is due to various causes like physical habitants and resources which are outer, and also there are inner causes like the range of possibilities inherent in various areas of activity. But all these are known as cultures because they have some essential element in common. So this is a very important point which must be noted down very seriously. The essential elements common to all culture will constitute the universal world culture, which is analogous to the universal grammar in the sphere of language. One of the important aspects of culture is the cultural sustainability, as the sustainability of the economic activities, which must concentrate on both the individual as well as the community. In culture, the individual values as well as the social values are important. They have to be safeguarded. The individual's values cannot be sacrificed for the sake of the community. Though sometimes it is said the individual can sacrifice the values for the community, in culture both are preserved. This actually takes us to the philosophy of Immanuel Kant, the Western philosopher, who talked about the categorical imperative, wherein it is said that no one can be treated as a means. So each and every individual is important and they play a role in shaping the culture or preserving the culture. Now, if you look at Indian tradition, it has got a very long history in which the culture has been playing a very important role. It is said that Indian historic traditions have been shaped by culture. So one can say that culture is the guardian of the people, which means it protects people. And it would react, that is, the culture reacts when there is a threat to it. This means that whenever there is a threat to culture, then people would react. So when the right of a particular cultural group is affected or violated, then there is always a protest. Then there is always a protest, which means the cultural values are so important for the individual or the community. So if there is a disturbance to this culture, then there is a protest among the people who belong to that culture. One of the important cultural anthropologists of India is Professor G.C. Pandey, and he says that there are three ways by which one can approach a culture. One is a scientific approach to culture, the second is a historical approach to culture, and the third is the metaphysical approach to culture. Now in the scientific approach, he says, essential by nature, whereas historical is both modern as well as traditional, depending on one's own approach to history. But the metaphysical aspect of culture is very important. The metaphysical approach, according to him, is basically traditional, and it has two varieties. The first one is identified with orthodoxy, and the other is with the content of mystical revelation or intuition. So this is something which is unique in Indian culture. That is, in the metaphysical approach, we have orthodoxy, which is given to us in tradition, which we have to preserve, and also there is a mystical revelation or intuition. So these are the two important the metaphysical aspects of a culture which has to be taken very seriously. I would like to state here that there are different ways by which one can understand culture. There is a interrelation between tradition and modernity, and culture adopts to situations. Culture is not static, it is dynamic. In culture, values are preserved As I said earlier, there is a distinction between core and the periphery aspect of culture. There is no one single culture. The validity of all cultures must be accepted, and language also plays a significant role in understanding culture, and custom, values and modes of living are important in the context of culture. These are some of the important, I would say, salient features of a culture. Of course, one or two aspects of this can be discussed here. One is the language. In culture, the language plays a very important role. In fact, one can say that language is that which shapes the culture. And in culture, there is always a custom that is practiced. People who belong to a particular culture, they have some customs or habits, the values and the mode of living are playing a very important role in shaping the culture. And can we have one single culture? At least in Indian culture, in Indian context, one can say, though we talk about Indian culture in general, the Indian culture is composite in nature, which means it contains in it the cultures which emerge at a particular region or a particular state. So this is also important. So all these are included under the banner of Indian culture. So this is another important aspect of Indian culture. If you look at Hindu culture, for example, we have the social stratification. The social stratification where we say the society is divided into four important categories. For example, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras. Now this is what we call the social stratification of India, which means the human society in India is classified into these four categories. That is, the Brahmanas, this is what is stated in the Vedic or the Upanishadic tradition. Now this means the four categories of human society work together for the promotion of social values. They are not in conflict with each other. The Brahmanas, for example, they are said to be the priestly class, and their job or their main concern is to utter the mantras. Then the Kshatriyas are the warriors class or the soldiers who fight in the battlefield. The Vaishyas are the trade people or the business people who work for the society, and the Sudras are the people who work for the entire society. So in this way, the social stratification is emphasized in Indian tradition. This is somewhat similar to the Plato's classification of human society into three categories. Of course, there are differences, but normally it is said that this comes very close to Plato's understanding of society. We have to remember the fact that this classification basically is not meant to show the hierarchy among people. Initially that was the purpose. Initially that was the aim. Initially it was written in the Vedas and the Upanishads like this. But later it is based on the caste distinction between one caste and the other. But basically we have to remember the fact that all these classification of society work among themselves for the promotion of human values. And Look at the Hindu marriages. This is how Hindu marriages are being performed, where there will be a Purohit who will be uttering some mantras. In the presence of the mantras, the sacred thread or Mangalya we call it, is tied to the girl. You can see the picture. How, because it's a very, very beautiful ceremony. Marriage in Hindu families is a very beautiful occasion. So where there are a lot of relatives and friends, they celebrate the marriage, and the performance of the marriage will take 2 days, and in some families it will be for 3 days. And there is also the religion. Now we have been discussing about Indian culture. Now let us go to religion. One of the important religions of India, of course, there are 3 important major religions of India: Hinduism, Jainism and Buddhism. Now Jainism, the founder of this great religion, Jainism, is Mahavira, and Mahavira is one who had a compassion and reverence for life, because these are the 2 principles of Jainism: compassion and reverence for life. And according to Mahavira, the founder of Jainism, compassion is a guiding principle of non-violence, and it is said to be the virtue of all virtues. In Sanskrit, it is said like this: Ahimsa paramo dharma, which means of all the virtues, ahimsa, that is non-violence, is said to be the supreme value. Why? Because according to Jainism, as I said earlier, in Indian tradition we consider life exists in all forms. So Jainism also believes that ahimsa is the highest principle of life. And also it is interesting to note that Jainism is a philosophy which talks about the philosophy of coexistence. This is a very important aspect, and in fact if we follow the principle of Jainism, then one can understand that there is no hierarchy among people. Each and every individual is important. In fact, they say live and let live, which means the world has enough space for my life, so I should not hinder the life of the other. So that's the reason why you say this philosophy is known as the philosophy of coexistence. The other must also find a place in this world. I should not hinder the life of the other. And similarly, another important religion which has emerged in the Indian context is Buddhism. Lord Buddha, who is the founder of the religion, actually initially it was not a religion, but later it has become a religion, I would say. And this also has some basic principles. For example, this religion, like Jainism, has these 2 principles, namely love and compassion. Love and compassion, that is, love both living and non-living. As I said in the initial talk, as I said in the beginning of my talk, love both living and non-living, because non-living cannot be neglected. And this philosophy of Buddhism as a pragmatic philosophy. Pragmatic philosophy in the sense it has got the utility, value which is necessary for human society. And one principle that is practiced in Buddhism is non-killing and rejection of all virtues. In fact, Buddhism emerged as a reaction, okay, emerged as a reaction to Hindu ritualistic practices that were going on during Vedic times. So, Buddhism rejects all rituals and it speaks about the attainment of nirvana, which is the state of liberation. Then another important religion which has emerged in Indian context is Sikhism. Sikhism is a very important religion and Guru Nanak is the founder of this religion. One of the important aspects of this religion is against caste system, because the caste system, it is said, is one of the evils of Hindu philosophy, wherein we make a hierarchy among people. Remember, while talking about the social stratification, I said the society is classified into 4 categories. But later, this has become a caste-based society. So, Guru Nanak was against this society which is based on caste. So, he was against the caste system and he was also against all kinds of rituals like Buddhism. This religion also rejects all ritualistic practices that was going on in Hindu context, and it believed that God is one and no priest is needed, and the sacred text of the religion is Adi Granth. So this is the quintessence of Sikhism. So this religion, that is Sikhism, emerged as a reaction to many social evils that unfortunately prevailed in Hindu religion. So, one important aspect of this religion is the rejection of a caste system. There is no hierarchy among people of India according to them. Okay. So far we have analyzed a few religions which has emerged in Indian context. Now what do they convey? They convey that there are some common principles, then that there are some common characteristics in Indian context. One is there is a unity among religions. And there is also what is known as oneness of religions, and love, compassion and non-killing is emphasized in all religion. This was the purpose of religion. Love, compassion and non-killing are the basic tenets of all religions. If you look at Indian way of life, one can say that individual life is divided into 4 ways. One is brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha and sannyasa. Remember, we have been talking about social stratification, where the human society is classified into 4 categories. Now, Indian way of life, you look at Indian way of life, one can see that each and every individual life is also classified into 4 categories. The first is brahmacharya, that is a student stage where the first 25 years it is expected that the students stay at the house of the guru or teacher and learn the text. So this is a learning process, or we would say as a student one has to recite mantras, one has to learn the meaning of life under the guidance of a guru or teacher. Then a grahastha, second stage, grahastha means it is a family life. After student life, one enters into a family life. And third stage is a vanaprastha stage. At one stage, that is, it is said at the age of 50, one has to renounce the family and enter into vana. The word vana means forest. one must enter into forest life to meditate. Then after that, you must become a sannyasa. So what is important is, in Indian way of life, you see both the individual as well as social life are interrelated. There is a synthesis between the individual as well as a society, which is emphasized. Most important aspects is emphasized Indian philosophical tradition. It is said that there are 4 important values which one must practice. One is dharma, artha, kama and moksha. Dharma is quite often translated as a virtuous life, though it is not a correct translation. This translation, that is virtuous life or virtue, comes very close to dharma, or sometimes it is translated as righteous life. So this is very important. Second is artha. Artha here means wealth. So one has to acquire wealth also, because without wealth one cannot survive. Then kama, that is a third stage where it is said one must have a family life. Then the fourth is the moksha or liberation. So all the 4 stages are essential for human being. So the purpose of life ultimately is to attain liberation. In fact, it is said attaining liberation is the highest value. It is known as the Parama Purushartha, which means the purpose of human life is to attain liberation or moksha. But in order to attain liberation, one has to practice dharma. One has to practice a virtue in life. As a student, one has a responsibility, that is a student's dharma. As a teacher, one has a responsibility, that is a teacher's dharma. So at each and every stage, this is actually known as swadharma, one's own duties. So each and every individual has a dharma or a virtue which he or she has to practice. But please note that artha and kama, that is wealth as well as sensuous life, are important. They are not neglected, but they are only instrumental values, which means one has to transcend that at one stage or other. So moksha, which is said to be liberation, is the human purpose, or one has to work for liberation. Here there is a very beautiful analysis which is found in Indian tradition, that is whether moksha is something which has to be attained in this life itself, or is it something which one has to attain after the death. This is one important question which is raised in Indian philosophical tradition. And there are some schools of thought which believe that one can attain liberation while living in the body. That is, one can be at this life, at the same time one can attain liberation. They are known as Jivan Mukta, that is liberated souls. That is, they live in the world, but they will not be affected by the pleasures and pains of the world. The beautiful example that is given is the lotus leaf. If you put water on the lotus leaf, it will not stay. No? So this life, this is a detached life, is something which is practiced at the Jivan Mukta stage, or the liberated soul. But there are some schools of thought which say that liberation cannot be attained as long as you have the body. Only after the destruction of body one can attain liberation or moksha. So there are different views with regard to moksha. Another important theory which we find in Hindu religious thought is the karma theory. The word karma means action in short. That is, the English translation of the word karma means action. Now, this action they classify it into 3 categories: the past action, the present action, and the future action. A very beautiful analysis is available in Indian tradition. They say that you have taken this present birth because of your past karmas, that is past activities. So that is the reason why this birth or this body is given to you. While living in this world, that is this present life, you can't be idle. You have to perform some action or other, it is inevitable. So while living in this world, you perform some actions, that is present karma. So for which there will be some consequences. So the past, present and future are interrelated, which means action is inevitable. Action is inevitable in life. And so, naturally Hindu philosophy tries to speak about what is known as life after death. Life after death means there is life after death. What does this mean? This means that after the destruction of the physical body at this world, you take a different body in the next birth. In fact, the beautiful text Bhagavad Gita says that when like changing our clothes, every birth we change our body. Some new body is given. So this process goes on. So in Indian philosophical tradition, one can see the transcendental as well as the spiritualistic tradition. The spiritualistic tradition is something which is very important if we want to understand the Indian systems of philosophy. So it is also believed that body is inferior whereas the soul is superior. Now what is soul? It is otherwise known as jiva in Sanskrit, which means there is always, Hindu philosophy makes a distinction between body and the self or the soul. And they consider that body is always inferior because that it can be destroyed, whereas a soul can never be destroyed. So when death comes, it is only the destruction of the physical body. So that is the reason why they said the body is inferior. Sometimes in Western tradition we talk about matter and spirit, and we consider that spirit is more important than matter. This is somewhat similar to that. Of course, these are the major religions, as I said just now. Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism and Sikhism are the four major religions of India. And the photograph which I am showing is Swami Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, a 20th century philosopher who made a very significant contribution to Hindu philosophy, because the uniqueness of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa is that he had the mystical experience. He was able to see Kali, the supreme god, and also he was able to see the leaders of other religious tradition. So in short, one can say Hinduism is one of the ancient religions of the world. And secondly, this term, the Hinduism or Hindu, the term Hindu is of foreign origin, because Hindu is, in fact, many scholars argue that it is not a religion but a way of life. So, in fact, we have to see how the word Hindu or Hinduism is used. The people who lived on the other side of the river Sindhu are known as Indus and later as Hindus. This is how the word Hindus or Hindu is coined. In fact, it is a Persian word and it is believed in the philosophy expounded by the sages and saints. And it is not a founded religion like Islam or any other religion, not founded by any prophet or founder, and it is a born religion. Because we cannot point out a single person and say he is a founder of this religion. and look at the various temples, Hindu temples which are available in India, the picture very clearly shows that how there is a different temple architecture that was prevalent, that has been prevalent in India. Now, what is the quintessence of Hindu philosophy? One can say all religions are equal and it connects an individual with the supreme reality and it accepts the coexistence. Now, this I would like to say something on this word coexistence, because sometimes the word tolerance is used. In tolerance, what do we mean? If you analyze the meaning of the word tolerance, it means that okay, I am tolerating you. It means you are inferior to me, but somehow I tolerate you. This is what it means if you analyze the word tolerance. That is the reason why Swami Vivekananda, who said tolerance is not the proper word, but it is coexistence, which means the other also has the same right to survive on this earth. So coexistence is the right word. So because tolerance is a blasphemy according to Swami Vivekananda, and devotion is important in Hindu tradition. Some of the mystical aspects of religion, these are some of the mystical aspects of religion. There are certain things which cannot be known, but one can only be shown. I am using some Western paradigm or Western methodology to emphasize this point, because they say, for example, Wittgenstein is a very important philosopher. He says there are indeed things that cannot be put into words. God's experience, for example, you can't put that in words. That is the reason when Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he had a mystic vision of Kali, he was unable to express that. So, in Western terminology, they say there are indeed things that cannot be put into words. The nature of such experience cannot be explained. So, they make themselves manifest, that's all. Only a mystical person, only a person who has undergone this mystical experience can know this experience, but he cannot communicate to others. Others can never understand this. And the Hindu scriptures also play a very important role. For example, we make a distinction between Shruti and Smriti. That is what is heard and what is remembered. And we also talk about the 4 Vedas. And the concluding portions of the Vedas are known as Upanishad. The word Upanishad, it contains 3 words, Upa, Ni and Shad, which means sitting near the teacher and receiving instruction about the ultimate reality. This is what it means. Which means the ultimate reality is something which cannot be known. The ultimate reality is the knowledge of Brahman, for example. So that can be taught by a spiritual guru. So that is the reason why Upanishad says that sitting near the teacher and receiving an instruction about the ultimate reality. And there are moral codes also. For example, Manu is a moral ethical code. And there is also 2 epics. And we have got Puranas. And we have also got avatars, 10 avatars. For example, if you look at Vaishnavism or Vishishtadvaita philosophy, they talk about God descending on earth in order to take care of their devotees. For example, he has taken the avatar of fish, tortoise, boar, man-lion, dwarf, man with axe, Rama, Krishna, Buddha. Buddha is also included in this list, and Kalki, because when the world is coming to an end, the Lord will have the Kalki avatar. You must be knowing that. So, in Hindu way of life, there are 2 ways of understanding it. One is the philosophical Hinduism, and the other is the popular Hinduism. Because in Hindu philosophy we make a distinction between Astika and Nastika. Astika here means those systems which accept the authority of Vedas, and some systems which reject the authority of Vedas. For example, if you look at Jainism, Buddhism, and another school of thought called Charvaka, materialism, they do not accept the authority of the Vedas. So there is a distinction between those systems which accept the authority of Vedas and those who reject the authority of Vedas. And a very important contribution you can find in Vedanta. Vedanta means Veda plus Anta. Anta means the concluding portion of the Vedas. Vedanta. And there are three schools of thought which is very, very important. One is Shankara school, that is Advaita known as, that is for them non-dualism. And the other is qualified monism founded by Ramanuja, and both belong to South. Madhva also belong to South. So all the three acharyas, they belong to South India. So they founded three important systems: Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, and Dvaita. And I'll skip this. There are important texts like Brahma Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and the Upanishads. These are the important texts. And also in popular Hinduism, we have this difference. We have Saivism, we have got Vaishnavism, and there are also minor deity worship in Hinduism. For example, in every village or in every family, they have got their own mode of worship. So this is known as minor deity worship in Hinduism. So I'll skip that. These are the festivals which are practiced. So Ramanavami, Krishna, then Janmashtami, then Ganesh Chaturthi, and Durga Puja, which is very famous in your place. So Deepavali, Pongal, Mahashivaratri. So these are some of the important festivals which are connected to Hindu philosophy. And we celebrated Diwali and Vinayaka Chavithi, which is very famous in Maharashtra. You see the festival that is going on. Then Car festival is also very important in Hindu way of life. Then Holi. So these are the distinction between the classical and contemporary period. The classical period is up to 9th AD. Then Bhakti period is from 10th AD to the 18th AD. And then we have got very important religious movements. Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, Theosophical Society. And one of the greatest contributors to Brahma Samaj is Raja Ram Mohan Rai, who is mainly responsible for establishing Brahma Samaj, which could remove the evils of Hindu philosophy. For example, the widow remarriage is one who has emphasized on that. And then the sati is a very bad social evil which he could remove. Sati practice and child marriage he could remove. So these are some of the important development that took place in Hindu philosophy. For example, great thinkers like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Swami Vivekananda, Aurobindo, Satya Sai Baba of Shiradi, Satya Sai Baba of Puttaparthi, then religious mutts and their role. They also, this is Satya Sai Baba, Ramana Maharishi, Sai Baba, then Vivekananda. Then there were also, this is a concluding part of my lecture, the revolt movements in Hindu philosophy. There were some, in one way we can say the Hinduism progressed from the Vedas up to the present, but there are also revolt movements, because in the revolt movements there were some problems according to the followers of this revolt movement. There were some problems which they find in Hinduism. So Charvaka, for example, in the materialistic philosophy is one school. They do not believe in any religious rights, they do not believe in heaven or hell, and their philosophy is eat, drink and be merry. This is one revolt movement. And Jainism, which has been discussed just now, is another revolt movement. Buddhism is also another important movement which revolted against Hinduism. And then the modern period, this is very important. There are thinkers like Pule, Ambedkar, E.V. Periyar. What made them to criticize Hinduism? This is one of the important aspects which you have to take into account. One is casteism. Casteism has been playing a very important role in Hinduism, and there is always, unfortunately, there is a hierarchy among people. This is also one of the social evils of Hinduism. Then too many rituals, that's also criticized, and some superstitious beliefs which are practiced. And so, as a result of that, many social reformers emerged. So, I would like to. The shrines and temples played a major role in bringing spiritual peace and happiness among people. So, very, very beautiful quotation we can find in Ramakrishna's writing. He says, the Ganges water is not to be regarded as water, nor the dust of Sri Vrindavan as dust, nor the Mahaprasada of Sri Jagannatha as rice. These three are objective manifestation of the Supreme Being. This means, Ramakrishna says, once you enter into the temple or that premise, then these are not the ordinary offering. They may be ordinary offering, but they have got a special significance. So that's why he said, the water here, which you find here, and the water in the Ganges may be one and the same. But Ramakrishna says, no, it is not like that. The Ganges water is not to be regarded as mere water. Similarly, Jagannatha, I don't know whether you have visited Jagannatha, Sri Jagannatha temple, did you go? Where? Puri. Where they will offer, the Pandas will offer you the Mahaprasadas. It is like, vegetable mixed rice. This is ordinary rice. But if you take the prasada there, it has got a special significance. This is a very beautifully explained by, of course it is based on belief only, and Lord Shiva, so Lord Vishnu with his vehicle.
Please explain about the vehicle.
What? Pardon?
You said, yeah.
This one? You
Yeah.
want me to explain? Yeah, this is very important. I'll pray to that, I'll go to that. Yeah, this one. This is a very important aspect. Now, Shaivism is one of the important religions of India. It is said because of the hierarchy which is prevalent in Hindu philosophy, some devotees were not allowed to go inside the Shiva temple. One such person is Nandana. He belongs to Shaiva sect. He was not allowed inside the shrine because of his caste. He belonged to the lower caste. So what happened? Lord Shiva himself from the temple he came out and gave darshan to him. So this explains two things. One is though we talk about religion, there is always a hierarchy that is practiced in religion. And secondly, when it is too much, then Lord himself comes to the rescue of their devotees. This the life of Nandana is something very remarkable. He was doing service to his masters, but every time he has been requesting him, please allow me to go to temple to see Lord Nararaja. He did not allow him at all. Then at one time he got permission, and when he went to the temple, the devotees, some devotees not allowed him to go inside the temple. So Lord himself comes out of the temple and gives darshan. So this means the sanctum sanctorum is something very important, no doubt, but at the same time each and every person has the right to worship the Lord. So these are some of the problems which point out that all is not good in a religious way of life. There are certain evil practices that are going on in this. Now, one thing I would like to say here is that the human person, you look at the body of the individual and look at the temple. This is how we make the temple architecture. I had a very good friend by name Ganapati Stabadigan, who has made a lot of temples. From him I got this important slide. He argues in one of many, he has written a lot of books. In one of his important papers, he argues that human beings simply represent the temple, or the temple represents the human being. You see how he has drawn the parallels between the human beings and the temple. And look at this temple of Lord Naraja. He has constructed many temples, many vigrahas. Now look at the way in which he has made the distinction. That is how he has made the image. So the pilgrimage here is very important. It is argued in Hindu philosophy that life itself is a pilgrimage. The whole lifetime is a time for undertaking a pilgrimage. I would like to state here that many Hindu worshippers go to Varanasi or Kasi. I visited this place a few years ago. I could see that many very old people stay there and they want to die there. Because dying at Kasi is, they believe that they will get immediate moksha or liberation. So, the life is closely connected to religion. You can't live a life without religion. This is what is emphasized in Hindu way of life. I'll skip some of the slides. Now, all this point to one thing. I got 2 more slides only. Now, religions explain that there is a need for a spirit of tolerance, Catholicity of outlook, respect for each other's faith, and willingness to abide by rules of self-discipline. We have to keep in mind, it should be understood that different religious communities are all part of one nation. One may practice Hinduism, one may practice Christianity or Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, but we must remember that we are all part of one nation. And it would be a tragedy if, for lack of tolerance and deviance from the essential strength and glory into bane of weakness. Religion is for human beings. So we should understand the fact that religion should have a social outlook. It must have a concern for the poor and the needy. That is the reason why Swami Vivekananda long back said, I do not believe in a religion which cannot wipe out the tears of a widow or which cannot bring a loaf of bread to an orphan's mouth. So this is a very beautiful, I always quote this because I was so fascinated to read Swami Vivekananda, because he was concerned about the social upliftment. In fact, he said the poor are Daridra Narayana. Narayana is the Lord. They are poor God, which means they must also have a proper place in the society. So there are certain fundamental concepts in all religions. The first is that the unity of all religions, and second is Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. This is a very beautiful concept in Hindu philosophy. that the world, you treat the entire world as one family. And third is that there is what is called divinity in man. There is a spark of divinity in each and every individual. And secondly, there is an essential unity of all regions. So with this I would like to conclude my talk, and I am happy that I had the privilege of discussing this concept with you. And if you have any questions or think any clarification is needed, please. Please, anything? Like to say something?
Please.
Almost all those things I already have studied in my...
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. You say that caste is very important in Indian society. But caste sometimes creates so much problems also.
Yeah.
We have seen so many crimes also on that.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, actually I didn't say that caste is important for Hindu way of life. What I was trying to say is that the initial stage, please do visit it. In the initial stages of life, okay, or in the initial when the social stratification was made, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras, there were no caste system that was prevalent. It was nothing but the division of labor. But later they became a caste-based society. Hinduism became a caste-based society. Wherein it is said the duty of the Brahmanas is to preach, that is utter the mantras. Then they say that the second category they have to fight. Then third are business people, and the fourth, the Sudras, is the most pathetic situation. They say they are slaves, they are treated like slaves. They have to do their job for the other. So initially that was not the purpose. But later when the caste system was introduced, the jati, when it was introduced, then it got segregated. You are right that caste system has done a lot of damage to Indian way of life. Nobody can deny that. There are all kinds of things are happening. For example, since you are from India, you know the honor killing is very much prevalent in many places, especially in South. So all these are not there in original philosophy of Hinduism. But later these are all mixed with caste, and as a result of that we are facing this society. But I would like to state that it is very difficult for us to do away with caste. Now only thing is, we are trying to see, no, this was not the purpose. Our purpose is to understand the original meaning of this hierarchy, not hierarchy, the social stratification. But I don't think it is possible. It will be there, unfortunately. Because it is demarked like this, a Brahmin should always higher caste. So this caste, when the caste system is introduced in Hindu way of life, this is inevitable, and I don't know how to solve this problem. I don't have any answer to it. That is the reason why many social reformers like Ambedkar and others, Phule and others, fight against this, and they were making some effort, but it's very difficult to remove the caste system in India. You know that. It's very difficult. Very difficult.
And whatever Dr. Ambedkar has reformed in our law.
Yeah.
So because of that also now some kind of against people.
Yeah, that also actually, Ambedkar, when there is a hierarchy, if you see the 19th and 20th century literature, you would understand that how the Brahmins who are occupying only 3%, they could ruling the entire society. Right? So this is something very bad. That is the reason why Pule, then Ambedkar, and in South Periyar and many others fought against this, and by introducing, and Ambedkar had a great privilege, I would say, because now in the constitution he could make certain amendments, and the result of that the reservation system has emerged, which has benefited a lot of people. No doubt. No. So these things are needed, but at the same time, unless you change your attitude towards the other, it's not possible. Isn't it?
It's true.
Nothing can be done. It's very difficult. That means the change of mind alone can bring a change. We can't do this by mere constitution or by giving some concession to that. I must be ready to accept you. I must be ready to accept the other as me. So that is possible provided there is a change of attitude, which I find very difficult, very difficult. I don't know, I don't know, I don't have an answer for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned that some aspects of culture seem to stay the same, some core elements of culture.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wonder what exactly do you think actually stays the same? Because I think almost everything may be changing. But what do you think?
For example, the values which are preserved in my culture, and for example, I being a Tamilian, I have my own values. For example, the way of worshipping, the way of practicing my religion, my festivals, all these are part and parcel of my custom. But there are my way of dressing. For example, we are wearing pant, shirt, coat, suit, all this. These are all outside changes which are allowed, which are taking place. But this I would call periphery. But the core element is something which cannot be disturbed at all. For example, I can give one example just now. In Tamil Nadu, we had what is called Jallikattu. Jallikattu means that, what is that, bullfight. It is not actually a bullfight, taming the bull, that is the correct word. Taming the bull. This is there in from our ancient tradition. Ancient Tamil literature also shows that one who has got the strength, or one who wants to marry some beautiful girl, then he has to do this in order to attract her. All these were there. So this taming of bull is something which is part and parcel of a Tamil culture. Now what happened? You know that the Supreme Court has passed a law by saying that it has to be banned, and it was banned also. But there was a protest. Protest in the sense that it could affect each and every Tamilian. And as a result of that ban was removed. That is my culture. You don't touch my culture. My value, it is part and parcel of me. This is one good example, I would say. So the inner values, which are very much essential, can never be changed. Other things you can outward this thing, my food habit, all this. For example, chapati, we eat chapati. No, it is not our culture. Actually, it is from the north. We take it. That is all outside. The way of dressing, this thing, all this pajama, kurda, all we are wearing, all these are from north. That is possible. But inner values, I am not ready to give it up, because my identity will be lost.
The custom of marriage also.
The custom of marriage also. If I am following my own tradition, then that marriage ceremony has to be like that. If I don't follow that, it's okay. It is not somebody is pressurizing me to follow this. But if I want to follow, then these are the things which I have to follow one by one.
But if your daughter marries a person from a different country, then
there it will. That's why I am saying it all depends on where you are placed. If you are following a traditional marriage, then these are the things which have to be practiced. Otherwise, no, you are at liberty. So.
On the origins of Hinduism, you mentioned that Buddhism developed from Hinduism, and I think as a reaction against legalism. But the question then is, why as a fundamental religion, if we have animism, why would you create a legalized religion at the beginning? Because, for example, Shintoism is not very legalized. It's more love-based kind of freedom. So why would Hinduism be foundational? And it's because it's quite legalistic, and Buddhism is a reaction against it, maybe. Or what do you think? And so why would you start with the early religion? Why does it become so following so many rules?
And if you look at the origin of Hinduism, one can say that in the beginning, for example, in Vedic rituals, animals were sacrificed. It is a part and parcel of Hindu religion in the beginning, I would say, the Vedic times at least. But later, they changed, no doubt. But if you read the scriptures, for example, the ritualistic part of the Vedas clearly show that animal sacrifice were allowed. But this has made a tremendous impact on Lord Buddha. He said that no, this cannot be done. So this is a reaction to Hindu way of life. So that is the reason why we always say that Buddhism emerged as a reaction to Hindu ritualistic practices, but many of the principles which he had taught is very much available in Hindu philosophy. Hindu philosophy, no doubt.
Glenn is from the Philippines. Glenn, can you speak your question now?
Sir, good morning. And I have one question here.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile the caste, or do you pronounce it, caste system or caste, with the teaching of the Upanishads? Atman is Brahman. I had my short study on the Upanishads, the philosophical part of the Vedas, and if I were to summarize the teaching, I think Atman is the self, and all is one with God. So how can we reconcile the caste or the social class system in Hinduism with its basic philosophical teaching, which is Atman is Brahman? The way I understand it, Hinduism is not really polytheistic, but all these different gods actually manifest one God. Is this correct?
Okay. Thank you for your very interesting question. Now let me say that the Upanishads, which I would say, which deals with the philosophical Hinduism, because in my lecture, I made the distinction between popular Hinduism and philosophical Hinduism. Now, if you closely observe the Upanishadic teaching, it would clearly say that I am non-different from Brahman. Very rare, I am Atma Brahman, they say. Ham Brahmasmi. So all the Mahavakyas, in short, since you are familiar with this, I cut short this my explanation. The Mahavakyas clearly explain that the individual or the self is non-different from the other, which means I must, Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi clearly explain that I am non-different from the other. I am equal to Brahman. So this means there is identity between the Brahman and the individual self, which means I must treat the other as equal to me. So if I treat the other as equal to me, then there is no distinction between I and the other, to put in quotes, other. So in this way, one can say that when there is an equality between one individual and the other, there is no caste system or there is no hierarchy among the caste, the so-called caste. But the problem is we are not ready to go back to the philosophical Hinduism, especially what the Upanishads has said. Hope I am answered your question.
Glenn, did I answer your question?
I just have a follow-up question, sir. Thank you very much. That there's a difference between the philosophical teaching of the Vedas and the actual practice of Hinduism. I took notice of this for quite a time already. I was thinking that this philosophical teaching of the Upanishad is actually very basic in treating people equally. So we speak of compassion, love, equality, and social justice. That very principle is found in the teaching of the Upanishad. So that's why it takes me to observe that even the people have not actually practiced the core principle of Atman is Brahman. So there's a difference between what we call philosophical and the actual practice.
Yeah.
So is that true?
Yeah, this is how I analyze Hinduism. One has to go back to the ancient tradition and understand the real implication of Hinduism. Hinduism never denies the right of the other, but in popular religious way of life in Hinduism, this hierarchy is practiced, which but it is very difficult to overcome this practice. This is what I would like to say. But I always believe the best way to solve the problem is to treat the other as equal. The other is also important. So once you get the idea that the other is equal, then there cannot be any hierarchy among people. This could be understood provided you know the real philosophy behind Hindu way of life.
Thank you. Tahira, you have a question. Would you like to speak your question?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Ted, thank you. Thank you, Professor, for your very enlightening lecture. And it took us back to the Upanishads and to the ancient religion, the root of the religions. In this present day, my question to you is, what would be your comments on Indians who are living abroad and who do not practice the hierarchy system at all? So it's only one generation. Their fathers or grandfathers might have been practicing this, but as soon as they go abroad, they change their culture. Can we use this as a best practice to help speed up this change in mentality in India itself? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for your very, very important question. Quite often we discuss this problem. That is, a person who stays in a foreign country, why he or she is not able to practice the religion. This question we have discussed in detail, and I have an answer which I have been emphasizing wherever I go. One is, wherever you stay, don't give up your religious faith. Of course, one can say that I am secular, that's fine. But your values, the tradition which you belong to, cannot be given up. So, in fact, I have been telling this to many of my foreign friends, try to read our scriptures. Definitely you will be getting texts like Bhagavad Gita or the epics like Ramayana or Mahabharata. Why can't we teach this to our children so that the children will know the significance of our own tradition? In fact, I have come across many Hindu families who stays at different parts of the world, and they argue that their children don't know anything about their tradition. But I always insist them that give a text to them, and elders can teach the significance of our own religious tradition. And similarly, I would say that there are many Hindu families who, when they come to India, they buy a lot of books and they take some guidance from their spiritual teachers, and they go back and teach the children. Because I feel religion is something very important for human life. Because the religion only teaches the ethical values which are very important, and we belong to a tradition. And I would always request you not to give up one's own tradition. Tradition is very important, and this has to be practiced. The values have to be practiced, so that I feel that a beautiful society can emerge. A society which can take the values of the other can emerge, provided we understand the other. This is possible through our own religious tradition, especially the Upanishads. Beautiful translations are available on Upanishads, which is published by Ramakrishna Mission, and all this could be taught to our children.
So let's imagine I'm a Hindu in Tamil Nadu and I'm a Hindu in Bengal. Am I more likely to marry someone from the same caste in Bengal and Tamil Nadu, or am I more likely to marry somebody because they live in a Bengali marries a Bengali even though they're a different caste, or Tamil in Tamil Nadu? I think it's more likely to follow the caste even though the culture of Tamil and Nadu and Bengal may be different. Is that right?
To some extent you are right, because I feel that in one way is that we are all Hindus. Don't make a distinction among the castes. This is one way of understanding. The other way is that you can marry among your caste. But what is important is I feel that the religious tradition is important. That cannot be the values of that religion cannot be given up. This is how I view. I don't know whether I am right or wrong. This is how I view things.
Hello.
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 Professor Daryl.
Yes, Amaral, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, this is very important discussions. I am just gathering my knowledge regarding the issues. But something we are discussing here about the practice of religion in while staying in own country or when go to other country. It varies religion to religion, and the marital conditions, and as you have mentioned, I like to say like this. Actually, there are some religion very much formatted. Some religions, in my eyes, are not so much formatted. That does not mean they don't have the fundamental rules. They have the fundamental rules, but maybe not like formatted as other religion. For example, the religion Islam is very much formatted. Beginning from the before rise of the sun, we need to pray Salat, Fajr, then at the noon Johor, then afternoon Asr, then in the evening the Maghrib, then in the night Isha. But this is very formatted in the Islam. But I in my eyes, or I know more than 90% people by name Muslim but do not practice this. But that does not mean they do not believe Allah or the religion. That means practice is something we can see, something in mind that we do not see. In his life, in his activities, in his performance, in his behavior, we can assume this person is very much having religious values. Though he or she may not pray Salat 5 times in a day, or do not recite Holy Qurans like this. But other religion, I have seen many people like Christian or the Hindus, they have a lot of their religion rule. They follow, they do practice, no matter in country their own origin or in other country. They have a lot of values in the practice of their religion. This is one thing. The other thing is regarding the marital conditions. Actually, in Islam, religion, in the Holy Quran, some of the surah, the Almighty Allah has said, the Muslim man must marry a Muslim girl or Muslim woman. Never he allowed to marry a non-Muslim woman. But in the religion Hindu, so far in my knowledge, I never heard, I never seen that there is a strict prohibition in the Hindu religion that the Hindu people never marry other religion, either Muslim, Christian, Buddhist or other. Maybe they are very much open here in this regard to marry any people, any religion. Though traditionally, culturally, they do not tolerate, they do not accept. That is the culture of their practice culture, but not said in the religion. Fundamental rules of the religion never prohibited to marry Hindu girl, Hindu boys to other religion. It is open. So I think it is the practice in India or some other countries, not in the elite society of the Hindu, not in the educated society of the so-called Hindu. Though Hindu is not at all a religion, it is the Ved. Hindu is the zonal name. It is the below the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal people living in the Ganges. Every religion people are Hindu. For example, this is Amirul. Amirul living in this zone. I am also Hindu. But by religion I am Muslim. The Hindu also Indian or other country. Both people are Hindu, but that does not mean Hindu. So Hindu is never a religion. Why we are calling Hindu? No, there is no religion by name Hindu. I never seen, and people never can prove it. Hindu is a religion. It is the Ved. And the culture and the practice and values of different religions are strictly written in their holy books or religion books. That I mentioned regarding the marital issues. So Hindu people, Hindu boys and girls are open. There is no prohibition in their religion to marry any other people that have in the Muslim or Islam. Very strict, very strict over there. I don't have any idea about the Jesus Christ religion or Islam we say in the Holy Bible or the Jews who follows the Torah where there is the issue of marital issues. Maybe there are also same to Muslim, also Christian, the same to Muslim. So far I can guess. So I think the whole human beings under one rule, that is we are human being, we are very much open, we should have freedom, except in religion Islam, that who believes in Islam, who believes in Islam, they must follow the Quran and the Allah and the Rasul Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are some limitations and bindings, but maybe in Hindu religions are not. So this is my knowledge and my idea about these traditions and culture of various religions in the world. So thank you very much for allowing me to say or to telling something. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Thank you very much for your very interesting observations. Here I would like to say one may be a Hindu or a Christian or Mohammedan, but what I feel is that one has to follow one's own religious tradition. That is important. In Hinduism, for example, it is very much allowed in the sense that one can marry according to his whims and fancies, in the sense that he can choose a person from other community or other religious tradition. It's okay. But this is my personal view, of course. I feel that though there is no strict rules regarding that, I feel in order to preserve our values, it is necessary that we have to follow our own tradition. But I don't know, I may be wrong in this, in saying this, but I feel that every religion has got certain values which are important, which are to be preserved. That's why there is no strict rules regarding marriage. But if you ask my personal view, I would say that let us preserve our own tradition. One may be a Christian or one may be a Hindu, it doesn't matter. Let us preserve our own tradition. So one way, for example, in Islam they say that one has to pray for 5 times a day, and there are certain prohibitions and there are certain rules which have to be followed. But in Hinduism, no one is expected, or it is not said that you have to go to temple daily. Even you can stay at home and pray God. In fact, it is said in Tamil scriptures that our body itself is a temple. So one need not go to temple and worship. So there are certain relaxation that is available. But I always feel that let us preserve our own tradition. Whether one is a Islam person or it is a Christian or it. And another interesting thing which I said is about the word Hinduism or Hindu is not a religion. As I said in my talk in the beginning, that it is a way of life. Because the word Hindu is a Persian word and it is given by the foreigners. But it has come into work, it has come into practice that Hinduism has been considered as a religion. So we are approaching Hindu way of life from that aspect also. It is not a religion which has got an author or which has got the founder. So all these definitely show that Hinduism is different from other religions. But my simple or humble request is that we have to appreciate our own religious tradition, which is very important, which we have to preserve. It is a duty of each and every individual to preserve the values which are given to us by our ancestors.
So let's see about where does the God live? Does the God live in a temple? You mentioned, for example, the exclusion. And in fact, recently there's been, I know, some court cases in India to allow women entry to sacred places as a right. But if God is a creator God, then surely they don't only live in the temple. And you also mentioned this idea that the body is a temple. So why is the inner sanctum the place where God stays? Isn't God coming out? Or is that related to the incarnations?
I always believe that the temple is only a symbol. But it doesn't mean that each and every person should go to temple and worship God. Because a temple is a place where you see the unity of people, where we come across our friends, relatives and others, and there is a joy in praying God in group. That's why the temple has been made or created by our ancestors. So when we go there, we see different form of worship or different way of understanding God, and different idols, different images of God simply represent the individual self. So the individual, if you look at Upanishads, they would say, in the Upanishad period, I don't know whether there were any temple. They represent the identity of the individual self, the supreme. So that is the reason there are many, for example, we talk about the Siddhas in the Tamil Nadu. They never go to any temple. They consider their human body itself as a temple. So in fact they say this, why do you go to temple to worship the images? They were questioning that. So this is one way of worshipping God, through the temple, but it is not a necessity, I would say.
Any comments?
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
excellent lecture. Thank you.
I really enjoyed. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And I also thank my Skype friends who are asking some very good questions, and also I thank you for your wonderful questions. This is my way of understanding Hindu philosophy and Hindu way of life. You may not agree with what all I said, but one simple point which I would like to emphasize is preserve our own religious tradition, which is very important, and also it is the duty and the responsibility of the elders to transmit these religious values to the younger generation so that life can be more meaningful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.